Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined as always in a second by my co-host, Brian. Guys, we are back once again. Playoff football in full capacity here as we go into the Divisional Round wild card weekend. Just wrapped up a couple days ago on Monday Night Football with the Vikings and Rams game. We'll get to all of those games, which 5 of 6 were not that exciting, which is a whole nother topic that I will bring up, and we will talk about that in just a second. One head coaching hire has happened, some movement and some rumors have been going on for other head coaching positions. I want to get into that with you, Brian. With that, I welcome you in, man. How are you, and what's going on?
Yeah, very good on this Wednesday evening. Another kind of different
Different
time
day.
slot that we've done it. We did a Saturday afternoon, but we got that episode up pretty quick, so in
Yeah.
time for everyone to get all our picks. So that was good. And now we got, of course, a lot to break down, as you mentioned, and previewing the big four games coming up this weekend. Divisional playoff weekend. A lot of people
So much
say it's
better.
the best football weekend of the year, and it really is just a great weekend.
Yeah, I honestly think we could get 4 great games. Like, I think that is on the board that we can get this weekend. I'm super excited to jump into that stuff. But before we do that, Bry, before we even get into any playoff stuff, let's just start at the top. Let's talk a little bit of head coaching rumor news going on. Of course, the big official one that is in shock to 0 people on the planet. As of last time of us recording, Mike Vrabel officially has been welcomed in now as the head coach in New England. Not really a shock there. Any quick thoughts on that and kind of the very limited, kind of funky head coaching search they did up there?
Yeah, well, it almost seemed like it was a foregone conclusion. Like, as soon as the news came out that Gerard Mayo was out, it pretty much was like, okay, the Patriots are going to hire Vrabel. And it didn't
Yeah.
take
We
long.
talked
The
about that
interview
last
came,
week.
and boom,
Yeah.
right. So much for his interview with the Jets and anywhere else he may have had on his list. As soon as the New England job opened up, that is where he ended up. And yeah, not at all surprised. Former player there, clearly, very well respected coach. I mean, I do think he's getting a little too many high marks. Like, he
I
did
would
a
agree.
very good job
Yeah.
in Tennessee, but let's not act like you're bringing in a multi Super Bowl winner. I mean,
Right.
he still has a decent amount to prove as a head coach in this league. So I think it's a fine hire, but I think some people are getting a little carried away when it comes to Vrabel.
I agree with that. I think it's a really solid hire. I think I'm a little bit more high on him than you are. My thing is just New England has we're passing the buck off. Like, they have a lack of talent problem, like a serious one.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something that in 1 year you just turn on the switch and fix, unless like Drake May next season turns into Andrew Luck. Unless he does something like that and drags a team to the playoffs at maybe 10-7 or 9-8. I see this as a at minimum 2 year rebuild, if not 3, to really even get into the playoffs and start threatening, considering you have a Titan in your own division in the Buffalo Bills. The AFC is loaded with quarterbacks way more than the NFC. I think the path is extremely more difficult that you are dealing with in that conference. I think people need to pump the brakes. I even seen like a couple people, I believe one of them being Colin Coward, being like, "Oh, bold prediction. This team's making the playoffs next year." I'm like, let's calm down. Like, let's
No.
relax. Like, the chance of that happening are like 5%. And as I said, it's like Drake May having a historic jump from year 1 to year 2 of the type of quarterback he is. That's what it would really take. Otherwise, you have so much talent that you need to add to this roster, particularly at the skills position. Let's calm down. It's a good hire. I really like it. I think he is going to get a long runway in comparison to what Gerard Mayo just got. But let's calm down on that stuff. I agree with you on that. The only other coaching news, Bribe, that really we got was not a hire or anything else, but was not a fire either. It was kind of a parting of ways. Mike McCarthy is not going to be returning to Dallas. We kind of had a feeling this was going to happen, but in classic Dallas fashion, they deal with it in all the wrong ways, right? The Bears kind of contact him last week, request to interview. They deny it, and you're like, oh, maybe Mike will come back. Maybe McCarthy, they're gonna work something out here. Maybe a 2-3 year deal, something short. And then they kind of screw McCarthy out of that interview process and the time that he could have done that. And they end up parting ways with him anyway. And they immediately jump into the Deion Sanders rumors mill where it is confirmed, Deion confirmed it out of his own mouth. He was contacted. He said the job was intriguing, but he really liked being in Boulder. There's a little smoke there, but honestly, I don't think much. I don't really see him becoming the head coach of the Cowboys. Brad, what'd you think of all that, of them letting McCarthy go, letting him go in kind of the long, kind of drawn out way that the Cowboys seem to always do? And then what do you think of kind of the Sanders rumors going on?
Yeah, well, I think we should just come to expect that the Cowboys are going to handle these situations in not the best way,
Oh
so
God.
it doesn't come as a surprise. I mean, I felt like there was a decent chance McCarthy was going to end up coming back, given that the team really did battle down the stretch of the year, even after Dak got hurt, and with Cooper Rush under center. They were feisty in some games, even against some good teams, but ultimately it wasn't enough. As far as where they go, I mean, I could definitely see Deion Sanders being the pick.
Okay.
It seems like he checks all the boxes as far as being a former player there, star player there, has the admiration of Jerry Jones. It's kind of a swing big type of
It
move,
certainly
which would
is.
appease the fan. So I think there's a lot of attraction potentially there, but it comes down to two, like what happens with his son. Do they end up drafting Shador? You already have
Ah,
Dak signed, so
yeah.
that's another kind of conundrum. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a look at Ben Johnson. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that kind of has the feel of a cowboy type of move. But Ben Johnson may decide he's more comfortable, staying where he's at, where
Yeah.
he's doing a great job as the offensive coordinator with Detroit. So I just get the sense that it's not going to be a vanilla hire for the Cowboys. I get the feeling they want to swing big here. That's why, like the thought of Kellen Moore, to me, that just wouldn't. It doesn't have a lot of pizzazz to it. I know he was the OC there, but I wouldn't go that way. I feel like Dion, there's a decent chance it happens. Maybe it's Ben Johnson, but I feel like they're going to go for the sizzling kind of move here.
Yeah, unfortunately, you already said it. I think they're gonna end up going the vanilla way, and I think they're gonna get someone like Kellen Moore. I just think Jerry
Real.
he brings in people that he is comfortable with. He was a player. He was an OC there, obviously. Dak had one of his best years under Kellen Moore. Jerry is about Jerry. We've
No,
talked
you're
about this.
right.
We've talked about this many times. Other media outlets, obviously, way bigger than us, have talked about this. It's not like breaking news here. He cares more about publicity and making money about the Dallas Cowboys than he does about winning. It's just the facts. That is what we have seen since they won really their last Super Bowl. And I think he just feels familiar, a coach that would be proud and happy to get that spot, someone easily that he looks up to, that Jerry could control. That just feels like the way he's going. Now, would I do that? Absolutely not. I would take a swing and do Deion Sanders, right? Ben Johnson, I think,
Yeah.
could be good. But I think you go prime time, baby. You go a Super Bowl player for the Dallas Cowboys, which feels like a lifetime ago that the Cowboys were even in that conversation. He has the personality to not have Jerry Jones suck all of the oxygen out of the room. Prime stands on his own. Now, I think the possibility that he's been very clear about, he wants to coach his son if he went to the NFL. Shador Sanders to the Cowboys, that's out. They're picking 12. There's no way that's going to happen. Dak Prescott on his deal, I think if they cut him, it would be like $102 million that you could spread out over 2 years. I mean, it would be insanity to have that hit against your cap. He also has a no trade clause, so you would have to work that out if that's the route that you wanted to go, and you would still have to eat money in that regard, a significant amount of money. It just feels like if Prime wanted to go there, he's going there for the Dallas logo, and he really believes in what he could do there. I personally see that he stays in Boulder. I believe that video that came out last week where he said he's been looking forward to this moment since he got here, where both of his sons were no longer on the team, so he could no longer be a dad and a coach. He could just be a coach. I know coaches have lied before, I get that, but I actually take him at his word at staying in Boulder and building up that Buffaloes program and not getting involved in the circus that is in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see, but like you said, Jerry is in it for Jerry. I mean, that is always evident, but he just recently made a comment when asked, like after the season ended, if he would ever consider giving up the GM duties, and he shot that down completely. So you just know he's never gonna do it. He
Yeah.
runs the show. He's gonna do it his way, and that's just how fans are gonna have to accept it.
Yeah, he's in his early 80s. I mean, he still has final say, even though Stephen Jones, his son, has significant influence over that. It still comes down to Jerry. Have they made great draft picks over the years? Absolutely. But the way they handle the contracts, we talked about that at length with Dak and CD leading up into the season. I think signing Dak was a mistake in its entirety. It looks even worse after he missed most of the season with a major hamstring injury where it came off the bone. This team in Dallas, we correctly predicted. We were there was a lot of people that were still riding on the Cowboys, picking them to win the division or at least get to the playoffs. We both stood pat before the season started and we said this team's not making the playoffs. They had all the recipe to not make the playoffs, and that ended up happening regardless of the Dak injury. We had him fully healthy and missing the playoffs. Never mind him not even being
Yep.
there, and Cooper Rush and Trey Lance and all that going on. I just think the Cowboys are in the same spot that they always are. They are about making money. What is a splash move they can do? I really don't think they can. They really don't have a lot of cap room. The coach is really the only way they can go, and I don't think Dion's going to pick that. Now, if they were going the direction they were going and they were picking 5 or below and there was a shot to get Shador, I absolutely could see Dion going here. You're stuck at 12? Highly doubt he's getting that far, and that's the kind of the situation they are in. Bry, let's switch over to that wild card round. And at first, before we get into the games, let's address the elephant in the room that people are talking about that I want to talk about with you. The wild card round had 6 games this weekend. I believe this is the 5th year. You could correct me, or people in the comments could correct me if I'm wrong down below, of this expanded format of the 7 teams. 1 and
Uh,
9. 1 and 9 are 7 seeds versus 2 seeds since this format has been implemented. Obviously, the only win being the Packers of last year against the Dallas Cowboys. That is not great. 5 of the 6 games this weekend, blowouts. The only game being close that I correctly said last week, Commanders and the Bucks. The only game that came down to the wire. All these games were pretty much settled up by the second quarter, give or take. That's a problem. And even though I sat there, some may say as a fool, and watched all of these games that were, for the most part, pretty terrible, it does bring up the discussion, Bry, that I am someone that still likes this expanded format. I just think it's more fun, more possibility of things could happen. It's still a very new format. It's only in its 5th year, I believe. But are you for changing back to the 6 team seeds on each conference, 2 buys each in each conference, because maybe that 7th seed, maybe some of these teams getting in do not deserve to get in based on the product that we saw this weekend? Do you agree or disagree with that? What's kind of your opinion on that situation?
Honestly, I would like to go back to the old
Okay.
format. I really think the NFL had a perfect system with the 2 buys and the 6 teams from each conference. It just felt better each round. I mean, now I just feel like it's gotten a little watered down, and we're seeing this not just in the NFL, but all sports. What do they all want to do? Keep adding playoff teams,
Yeah.
thinking it's making it better. It might be good for the TV networks, but as far as the
Right.
product on the field or the court or wherever they're playing the game, it's suffering as a result because you have less quality teams that are making the postseason. And I know there's the argument, well, it enhances the regular season because it gives more teams a chance.
Yeah.
And I get that, but then when you get to this point, you're seeing non-competitive games a lot.
Yeah.
So I just feel like what the NFL had before was as close to a perfect system. You're never going to get it completely perfect,
No.
but I thought the way they had it was great. I didn't feel the need to add more teams, and I don't really feel like it's enhanced anything. It's not like there's this Cinderella team out there that comes in as a 7 seed and makes a big run.
Yeah.
So I like the old way. I mean, like we said, it's about the money, it's about the TV contracts and the ratings and all that, and it's good for all that. But as far as watching good quality football, or in the other cases, other sports,
Yeah.
I just don't think it's adding to it.
Yeah, I think watered down is the perfect way to say it. I still like the format. I'm still trying to believe in it, but this weekend was not a good look, right? Not even for 2 and 7 matchups. I mean, 4-5 matchups, both of those games were a blowout, right? The AFC 3-6 matchup, Steelers Ravens, horrible game. And we kind of knew that. And I think that was the problem last week of like, when we were picking those games, you're like, the Ravens are winning this game. I'm taking the points. It's a no-brainer. You knew the Bills were blasting the Broncos. You knew the way things were trending. The Packers were losing to the Eagles. Like those things felt like those 3 games in particular felt like you knew exactly what was going to happen, and it played out that way. The only couple toss-ups in there that maybe you didn't see coming were the Vikings and Rams being as much of a blowout as it was, and then the Texans and Chargers game being as much of a blowout as they were. That is kind of the anomaly for this year, but there's got to be something done, or there's got to be a way for us to talk about the 2-7 seeds. And they didn't earn it, so I'm not advocating for this at all. So I don't want this to get twisted. But the Bengals didn't earn the playoff spot. But you 100% can't tell me that game would have been more interesting than Cincinnati Buffalo. Like, it just would have been. You know it would have been because Cincinnati had beaten Buffalo in Buffalo before. That was a divisional round game, but they had beaten them there. The way that offense was, you know that game, even though the Bengals probably would have lost, you know that game would have been a fireworks show. And it would have been so much more interesting than watching a rookie quarterback of the Broncos getting to the playoffs for the first time since 2015, scoring in the opening touchdown, and then never scoring the rest of the game and getting outscored 31-0. Like it was inevitable that Josh Allen was going to take over that game. And yeah, I wanted to have that conversation there because a lot of bad football. We were texting each other back and forth over the weekend and going, "Oh my God, can we get a good game?" Like, holy Lord, this is bad. So let's get into these aforementioned games, Bry, and we'll run through them here just because they are playoff games. So even though if they're blowouts, there's still big stakes here. There's legacy implications and things going into next season. We'll start in chronological order. The Chargers visited the Texans. I got this game wrong. I picked the Los Angeles Chargers. I thought with that defense, this was a time of Justin Herbert showing up. The Texans had kind of been reeling. I gave them all their flowers, but I said, I just think so many injuries. They're not clicking. We've said that all season long. This team, it's going to be a close game, but I think the Chargers are going to win this one. What colored me shocked, and I'm wearing a big L on my forehead, absolutely wrong. This game flips really where the Chargers had multiple opportunities in the beginning to kind of blow it open. I think it was a 2nd and 19 that Will Dissly, wide open, dropped the ball. They end up settling for a field goal later in that drive. It's 6-0 most of the game. And then CJ Stroud on, I think it was 3rd and 19 or 3rd and 16, scrambles out, gets away, throws a dart on the right sideline, and kind of gets them going. He had a run later in the drive, and they score 10 points right before the end of the half. They're up 10-6, and the entire game changed, and the Texans never looked back. Bri, are you looking at this game more from what the Texans were able to do, because they deserve a lot of credit, or are you calling out Justin Herbert, who you made a comment to last week that this is a time to start showing up for all this so-called potential that he has? He throws 4 picks in this game, Bri. He threw 3 for reference the entire season. Who you put more of the blame on here? Are you blaming Justin Herbert and the Chargers more, or are you giving the Texans their flowers?
Yeah, I mean, I think I lean more towards the Chargers end of things. I mean, I want to give the Texans credit. They played a terrific game. Their defense was outstanding. They got after Herbert. They forced a number of turnovers. But from the Chargers' perspective, this
Yikes.
was very disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, in a year that it felt like it was a little bit different, that they were going to
Yeah.
get this franchise on the right track. It had a lot of good moments in the regular season. It really felt like Harbaugh came in and changed the culture around this team. That the games that were losses for years and years were actually wins this time around. And so you just thought now's their time in the playoffs. They're facing a team that, heck, Rex Ryan on TV called it a bye week.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
that
so
was that
that
was
was a bit of
so
an extreme.
disrespectful. I thought that was ridiculous, and they used that as bulletin board
Very,
material because I don't know if you saw after the game. D'Amico Ryan said in the locker room, "How was that bye week, guys?" They heard that. They
yeah.
used that as bulletin board material.
Yeah, that was a little rough from Rex, for sure. But the Chargers, I mean, like early in the game, it looked like they're kind of controlling things. Like they put a couple good drives together, but couldn't finish them, didn't turn them into touchdowns. And you're kicking field goals in the playoffs. You're starting to play a dangerous game.
Yeah.
And, they put the 2 field goals on the board, but then things kind of unraveled. And I think the play that you mentioned when Stroud on the 3rd and 19, it wasn't that the play where the snap goes over his
Yeah,
head and
it
he
was
has to go
fumbled.
back
It was
for it.
fumbled.
Right. So that play could have been a disaster
Yeah,
for Houston, and instead they turned a 3rd and forever into a first down. That was just a
it was
backbreaking
incredible.
play, and it felt like everything turned from there. The Chargers turned the ball over. They're getting pick sixes on Herbert, and they couldn't defend. Nico Collins had a huge game in the passing game for Houston. The Chargers just got run over. I mean, the defense that was solid for most of the season just didn't stack up. But really, the biggest problem was Herbert. I mean, I know not all the interceptions were on him. They're going off receivers' hands. Will
Yeah,
Disley, you mentioned, had the drop, and on the one interception, it
he
goes
was the
right through
pick
his
six.
hands.
Yeah,
So he certainly wasn't helping out. But, Quentin Johnston was a no-show in this game. It's like outside of Lad McConkey, who had a huge game and nearly
huge.
200 yards receiving,
Yeah.
there was just little to no production, and Herbert, he just didn't have it. I mean, too many turnovers, missed opportunities early in the game. It all added up to a lackluster playoff performance.
Now I get it, right? Like I'm not putting all the fault at the feet of Herbert, right? Because we've said all season long this team just doesn't have the skill positions. They have to build that up. I love Ladd. I like J.K. Dobbins. We need to build more. And I know that's not Jim Harbaugh's typical philosophy, but I think they will do some moves in the offseason. Quinton Johnson, he showed up for some games. He was not here in this one. He's not reliable enough to be your number one. Hell, he's probably a number 3 at best of what you're getting. But the other people that in the media that don't want to lay any blame at the feet of Justin Herbert, I think is ridiculous. The guy threw a less than 50
Yeah.
completion percentage in a playoff game. He threw 4 picks. And even if you want to throw the last one out
Mm-hmm.
where he kind of heaved it up, the game's basically over, he's just trying to get the other 3. You can't be doing that. The Will Disley one ends up being a pick 6. The one, the Lassiter that he threw on the first one was horrible. Then he throws one right over to the middle. The linebacker doesn't even see the guy. Those 2 picks are 100% on his fault. And if you want to add that long shot in where he could have thrown that ball a little bit deeper, got a little bit more air on it, he throws it too short, and Derek Stingley ends up picking off. It was a horrific game from Herbert. This is a bad look. I know it's only been 2 playoff games, and he's 0-2, and I understand that. But now we're looking at 2 really bad playoff games, Bry. He's up, 27-0 against Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, blows that game. Now you have a game here where you're up 6-0. You throw more picks in this game than you did in the entire season. You're left in less than 50% as a completion percentage. I just think he deserves a healthy chunk of the blame in this game, regardless of the people that are helping him out. He's supposed to be this, Peyton Manning 2.0 kind of player, proven product, great talent, cannon of an arm. Jim Harbaugh himself, toughest quarterback he's ever seen, best quarterback that he's ever really been around. And he's been around Andrew Luck, all of this stuff. And you're doing this in your 5th year? We're not talking about a rookie, Bry. We're not talking about a second-year player, which was the other guy on the other sideline, C.J. Stroud. We're talking about a 5-year guy, Bry. Doing that? That's just unacceptable, and I think he deserves a healthy chunk of the blame that happened over there on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot afford to have a completion percentage less than 50%. I mean, I get it. He had some bad breaks with ball going off receivers' hands, but like it wasn't a good performance for anyone to defend him. It's just too much. And I mean, the Texans, they played great on defense. You mentioned Stingley's name. I mean, he's just a stud.
He's
What a
amazing.
player he is. And Daniil Hunter and company getting after the quarterback. I mean, it's fair to say I underestimated the Houston team a
Me
little
too.
bit because I said when we previewed the games, I didn't believe in them, and I really didn't. But Chargers came in, and a team that just seems like it's always a disappointment, elevates the Texans, and now we'll see what they're able to do facing the Chiefs.
How many times, Bry, did we talk about Chargers are going to Charger, right? And what a way to sum that up. That it's like 3rd and forever. He throws up a ball to Lad
Yeah,
McConkey, 86-yard touchdown, and on the extra point, it's blocked and returned for 2 points. I mean, if those 2
exactly.
plays Don't say what we've been saying all of these years that the Chargers are just going to charger the chargering. I don't know what does. In a playoff game to do that, you have a little bit of hope, a little bit of momentum, immediately squashed, and that took the last bits of life out of that team. And on the other side, before we get out of here, like Stroud, another wild card win, 2-1 in his career in the playoffs in his very young career. They deserve a ton of credit. D'Amico Ryans in that defense. The Chargers are better ranked defense coming into this game. The Texans actually showed up. That Chargers defense did not. They deserve all the credit in the world. And these draft picks, Bry, at number 3 overall in a couple of these last few drafts, Will Anderson and Derek Stingley. A lot of people forgot about Derek Stingley, right? They forgot because he was hurt. He wasn't around. He kind of spot played when he was at LSU because he was really getting ready for the NFL draft. People forgot what a talent this guy could be. They talked about the young corners and your J.C. Horns and all that stuff. They didn't talk about this guy. This guy is one of the premier corners in the league. He's up there with a Patrick Surtain for me. Like, they're up there on that level. He's climbing to that. He might not be at Surtain's level yet, but he's getting right up there into that upper echelon of top 2 or 3 cornerbacks in the league, and he deserves his flowers in here. All in all, the Texans in a very familiar position, playing the early game on a Saturday, get a win at home, and I think they deserve a ton of credit. Brian, the night game that happened was very predictable. The Ravens hosted the Steelers. We just saw this matchup a few weeks ago, and the Steelers got blasted. Yes, earlier in the season, they won a weird game, 18-16, and Justin Tucker was missing field goals, and Lamar took a lot of flack after that game. Well, he was calm, cool, and collected. Him and Derrick Henry. They ran all over the Steelers. I think there was a drive they had 13 straight running plays that ended in a touchdown in this game. I mean, you want to talk about sapping the soul out of a defense? That's how you do it. When you go, you know what, we're not gonna even run the ball. I mean, we're not gonna even pass the ball. We're gonna run the ball every single time at the middle of your defense, and you're not gonna do a damn thing about what's going to happen. And that, I think, would set the absolute tone where if there was any hope in the Steelers, it was gone right there. Like, they were like, yep, we can't compete with these guys. We're cooked. It's over. And, Russell tries a little bit of stuff there in the second half, gets them on the board on a couple plays really from George Pickens. But that offense was dead on arrival. They've been dead on arrival. They end the season losing 5 in a row, Bri. For me, I look more at the Steelers. Maybe you'll look at the Ravens. I expected the Ravens to dominate. I look at the Steelers, and I look at the position that a lot of people are talking about this week. At the beginning of the season, I made a call that I thought incorrectly that this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, would be in last place. And they ended up in second place in this division, made the playoffs again. I had them for the first time finishing below 500. Hey, kudos to them. They're over 500 once again. Mike Tomlin, never been below 500. But is that good enough, Bri, for the Steel Curtain, the team that has all these Super Bowls? Another 10-7 season, to lose 5 in a row, including the playoffs to end the season. They haven't won a playoff game, Bryce, since 2016. That's almost 10 years ago. When is enough in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin? That's kind of where I leave that question to you. Or did you want to more focus on the Ravens side of it?
Well, I mean, I actually thought the game had a chance to be close. I think I gave the Steelers
You weren't
too much
alone.
respect and the rivalry too much respect, and
Yeah.
that really, more than anything, was why I thought it had a chance to be close. Not that the Steelers were close to being on par with the Ravens,
No.
because I certainly didn't. I just felt like these teams so often play these tight, gutty, competitive games in a playoff kind of atmosphere, and I was fooled because the Steelers did not up their game. I mean, you mentioned the first half, how they just got run over. The other thing that stands out about how the first half played out, you mentioned the drives and running the ball down their throat. They had 3 touchdown drives, and I think they all were 80 yards plus.
Yeah.
I mean, their
Yeah.
first drive, they started with the ball on like their own 5 yard
It's
line and
crazy.
cruised right into the end zone on a multi-play drive. So they were just able to do whatever they wanted. Like you said, the Steelers in the second half, Russell Wilson made some kind of fluky plays down the field
Yeah.
against a Ravens secondary that at times has been vulnerable. But this game felt very much over. It
Yeah.
was 21-0 at half. I mean, it was as one sided as it could be. And the Steelers, when they had the ball. I mean, there were drops. They couldn't run it. They just couldn't do anything right. And the Ravens, like we said, ran the ball down their throat. And if you're going to allow Derrick Henry to go for that kind of a game, if he's going to rush for
186 yards.
150 plus, you don't have a chance to win that game. If he has that production with what Lamar is able to do with his legs and arm, no team's going to be able to beat them. Now, I don't think they're unbeatable because I think there are teams out there who can potentially slow
For
down
sure.
their running game.
For sure.
But when they have it all working, I mean that offense is impossible to stop. I mean Henry is this is the best we've seen Henry play
Yeah.
at this point in his career. He's just been sensational. And the Ravens, even without Zay Flowers, right? It didn't really matter. It wasn't a prolific passing day for them, but they didn't need it to be. Lamar did what he needed to do. Henry dominated, and this game was over at halftime. It was 21-0. The Steelers felt completely dead.
As a team, they nearly rushed by for 300 yards. 300 yards as a team. I mean, this Pittsburgh Steelers team is supposed to be about, just like its history, defense, right? TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Highsmith and all these guys. Mika Fitzpatrick. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. He's out here. Derrick Henry's out here treating Mika Fitzpatrick like he's me or you. He's stiff arming him down the field like he's nobody. Like that guy's not an all pro over there. It was sad to watch because we grew up with these Big Ben teams, Super Bowls, Super Bowl wins, and even when they lost in the playoffs, these games were physical. Sometimes they were shootouts. That team is gone. They've been gone for like a decade now. And Mike Tomlin got more and more of these questions. Before the game, he said, none of the guys wear that. I wear that. All the losses that they haven't had a win since 2016. He shot down the rumors or the talks of people kind of hypothesizing about would a team trade for him. That's to be expected from Mike Tomlin. But I just wondered before the season, and I'm wondering even more now, is this just the way to go with this team? Like, is it not maybe time for him and for the Steelers to both get fresh starts? Because this feels stale. It feels like he's kind of lost his voice a little bit, and they have guys that just don't seem to care, and they can't solve the quarterback position. So I'm at a loss for what was once the great Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and I think we heard too on the broadcast on Amazon Prime, like Kirk Herbstreit, he was sort of voicing his
Yeah.
frustration, like this is the Steelers, like they're just getting run over here. It's not what we're used to.
No.
There was a suggestion I heard, which I mean has next to no chance of happening, but I just thought it was interesting. They were like the Steelers and the Cowboys both need changes. How about they swap?
I saw that.
Tomlin goes to Dallas. McCarthy goes to Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh area guy.
Yeah.
A nice idea. It's not going to
Never.
happen. I
Never.
mean, I would like Tomlin to the Cowboys more than I would like McCarthy in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But I like Tomlin with the Cowboys. That would be super interesting,
It
honestly.
it would
But
be yeah, it'd be
I mean,
interesting.
Steelers though, they're gonna stay the course because that's what they do, right?
Yeah.
They don't
Three
fire
coaches.
coaches
Three
and
coaches.
three coaches since going back to the 1960s. And I mean, hey, if they made a change, it's not without reason here. I mean, there have been a lot of disappointments in recent years. They have not been. They've been pretty mediocre, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long drought without winning a playoff game. They start this year 10-3, and you think there's going to be a difference, and the defense really kind of falls apart after dominating early on. It's just like you said, it's not what we've come to know the Steelers to be in our younger days watching football.
And I made a comparison weeks ago that this Steelers team felt very much like that 11-0 Steelers team, I think, in 2020. They felt exactly the same way, and that is exactly what they've been.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just for a second, the few people in the media that have a way bigger platform than we do, that honestly, about 3/4 of the way through the season, wanted to throw Russell Wilson in the MVP conversation. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be on TV. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that is crazy. I'm not saying hindsight's 2020. Then it was crazy. Now it is certainly looks like a horrific take. I couldn't believe when people were saying that at the time.
Honestly, I didn't even hear that, but I'm surprised. Can you reveal? Was it our buddy Colin Coward, or
No, there was a
who
couple.
was it?
There was a couple people. I think Kevin Wildes was one on FS1. There was another person I think on that NFL Live or whatever that ends up going on. I just think those conversations were ridiculous. I scoffed at them then, as I think some other people did. Now that looks like spoiled milk. That take really does. And yeah, I don't want to just gloss over the Ravens. Great job for them. An excellent playoff game for Lamar. He gets a lot of flack of he's terrible in the playoffs. Well, now he's 3-4. He gets a win this weekend. He's back to 500 against some pretty great competition for the most part that he has played. I don't think there's any problems there. But yeah, a really lackluster game on this one. Brian, we head over to Sunday. And the Sunday slate had 3 games. And the early game at 1 o'clock was the Broncos and the Bills. And, the Broncos, they go up to Buffalo. Nobody expects much of them. And that was correct. The Broncos, they come out, they strike first with a touchdown. You're like, whoa, hold on, Bo Nix and these
Yeah.
Broncos. This could be interesting here. Maybe we get into an interesting game. Nope, 31 straight points for the Bills. They're toying with them out there. They're going for on 4th downs, 4th and short, and they're passing it to Ty Johnson for, like a 30-yard touchdown in the back of the end zone. An excellent play by Josh Allen. These Bills, do they have flaws? Sure. Could you make quips about their defense not being that great because of the Rams and Lions games? Sure. But to say that this guy should not, for me personally, be the MVP, I don't know what we're talking about. I just don't. Lamar has these numbers. I get it. But he's got 2 already. What he did this year with so many less Pro Bowlers, Josh Allen. Remember, Lamar, 9 Pro Bowlers. Well, the Bills have like 3. Think it was something like that. This team, we've seen what they could do beating Kansas City in the regular season. They got a tough matchup coming up this weekend. I get it. But they handled these wildcard rounds, as we said, better than anyone. Josh Allen, I think, is like 5-0 now in these wildcard rounds, and they're blowouts. Remember when he destroyed Mason Rudolph last year? Like, these games are just, this is what happened. The Patriots game I always think of when they got kind of the Mac Jones team where they got shellacked up in there in Buffalo. They looked just as impressive as I would figure. And for me, this guy, he's just the MVP this year. What'd you think of that performance from the Bills there, blowing out the Broncos at home?
Yeah, well, I agree. I think you and I have been on the same page as far as Allen being the MVP, and I get the argument for other players. And Lamar, you could argue this season was better than each of his 2 MVP
You
seasons,
could.
and I wouldn't, would agree. I mean, he was that good this year,
Yeah,
but it's where you get into like the definition of valuable, which I feel like just gets
that's the argument.
there's not everybody's on the same page when
No.
it comes to the MVP. Like, it seems like people just want to make it a Player of the Year award, and that's like what it's become in all sports. And when you talk about valuable, I mean Josh Allen has been the guy. You
He's the
talk
team.
about doing more with less,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, this game in particular, like he played well, but I felt like he didn't really have to do anything spectacular. The defense just smothered Denver after that initial possession. I'm like watching the start of this game, Broncos get the ball and you get that bomb down the field for a touchdown. It's like, okay, Broncos came to
Yeah.
play. Maybe we got a game here. And from then on, we didn't hear from them the rest of the game. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't that into this game like in the second half,
No,
so
it was
it was
boring.
already decided. Yeah, but Allen, as far as the MVP, I'm with you. I mean, I don't think he has anything more to prove. I mean, he's been lights out in these wild card rounds, and I mean the Bills just cruised to a win here. An early hiccup with the defense giving up the one big pass play, but outside of that, I mean, Bo Nix, we hardly knew you in your playoff debut.
Yeah, that touchdown, 4th and 1, 24-yard pass to Ty Johnson was just a Superman moment for me. It just an incredible play and encapsulates what he is as a player, what they are as a team, and what he has been this season in Josh Allen. And Bo, we talked about rookie quarterbacks on the road. We'll get to one in a second in a little bit. They don't fare well. There would only previously before this weekend 3 wins ever by a rookie quarterback on the road. Bo Nix was not one of them. He did not break that trend. it was a tough uphill battle. I think the Broncos exceeded expectations. We both thought they would win over 5.5. I thought that was the easiest bet in the NFL to start the season. But to make the playoffs for the first time since 2015 to get there, I think that was a nice step in the right direction. Remember, with Russell Wilson's money still being on the books, so that still was handicapping them this season. I think what they did, how that defense came around under Vance Joseph, you want to watch a great team. Watch Vance Joseph's reaction to that play that Josh Allen pulls off. It shows you we tried the perfect defense, and that guy's just freaking Superman over there. There's nothing that we could have done different about that. A boring game for the most part, and not much more to talk about. James Cook deserves a lot of credit, man. He's really changed this offense and given them what we have been wanting for the last 2 or 3 years, a sustained run game that is not just Josh Allen. He deserves a ton of credit. Probably the middle game here was another, maybe the most boring game, honestly, of the entire weekend, at least personally for me. The Packers go up to Philadelphia. They lose 22-10 in a game that really was there for the taking for the Packers. If they weren't so poor on offense, 3 turnovers, all the injuries that they had during the game, which was so just sad to watch them just fall apart even more than they were coming into the game. That game was right there. And I've seen a lot of these Philly fans, and I get it. The team's riding high, right? They've won, 11 in a row now. They're the number 2 seed. They're a great team. But they also are pushing aside that this offense has not looked good. And they don't want us to attack Jalen Hurts. And they say we're blowing the A.J. Brown thing out of proportion. And none of this crap matters. You know the only thing that I believe in on that Philadelphia offense? Saquon Barkley. And that is it, because he could have had almost 200 yards if he didn't slide down at the end of the game, which is just a classic Barkley move that he's done his whole career. I honestly think he could have gone for it, but who cares, right? It wouldn't have really mattered. A.J. Brown reading a book on the sideline was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I've never, in a football game, I will say, because let's keep this realistic, right? It's just a sport. I couldn't believe seeing that. And after the game, some players and fans, he's done that before. We found one other video of him reading a book on the sideline, and it was in a blowout win. He had 1 catch for 10 yards in a playoff game, not a regular season game. As Jim Moore would say, we're talking playoffs here, right? Like, come on. Mm-hmm. And you're reading inner excellence to try to get, I guess, your head right when you've quipped about how bad the passing game. You said, a few weeks ago, what's the main problem with this team? Passing, right? You had the Brandon Graham story come out that we talked about. These guys are not really friends anymore. Then they tried to dispel that and say, it's a media creation. You're all clowns, just like all these athletes do, right? Even though you're telling us these things, or guys on your team are telling us these things, and now you're reading a book on the sideline where you had 1 catch for 10 yards and 3 targets? And you're telling me there's not some stirring, some brewing going on. All's well and good, right? Winning is the cure to everything. But I watched that game, Bri, and I was not impressed with the Philadelphia offense. Defense looked good against a very injured Packers offense. I don't know how much credit they deserve over there. They played well. That offense did not look good. And I think that's a concern going forward in these playoffs. Particularly, you go up against a team like the Lions, let's say, in an NFC championship. I think that's a problem. How did you see this game playing out?
Yeah, well, A.J. Brown reading a book, it took me back to Mark Sanchez eating a hot dog against the Raiders years ago.
What are we doing?
Players doing wacky things on the sideline when the camera's on them. But yeah, I mean, I can't defend the Eagles' offensive performance. It was subpar at best. I mean, you talk about a playoff game where your quarterback throws 131 yards. There really wasn't much here. The good thing was he did throw 2 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
They got a nice play by Goddard on that stiff arm when he took it all the way, like 20 yards. Very nice play. You certainly expect better from A.J. Brown, and I do expect better. I feel like he's a guy that he has these clunkers every now and again, but he also seems to respond after these kind of games. So I'm a little less worried about their offense going forward than you are. I just believe in the overall talent. I think you also have to, factor in that Hurts was dealing with the concussion. It's
Yep.
his first game back,
That's
might
fair.
have been a little rusty. You're facing a halfway decent defense. Still, I expect them, that they would have been better in this game, and it wasn't very good, but still, it was enough to win because the Packers, I mean, we knew going in, Love was dealing with the elbow injury.
Yeah.
It was apparent. I mean, he
Yeah.
was very off on his passes. He's not the most accurate guy to begin with.
No.
And then you give him an arm injury. That's just not a good recipe. Then you add in, they didn't have Christian Watson at the start, and then other guys go down as the game goes
Yeah.
along, like Dobbs.
Dobbs and
So
Reed.
they're just,
Yeah.
right. They just ran out of bodies here. I mean,
Yeah.
Jacobs did his part on the ground. They had the running game, but it just wasn't enough. I mean, like I agree, the Eagles could have done better. I think they will play better in further games in the playoffs, but I really think it's more about Hurts being a little banged up, and things can be kind of hit and miss with this
Yeah.
offense. There's games where they don't click, and then they do, and they put up 30 plus. And unfortunately, your Rams, I think, are going to see a better performance next time up.
Yeah, maybe Eagle fans will think I'm being too hard on it. I think this is a great team this season. I'm not denying that. I just think that it's unsustainable for the rest of this year and definitely going forward to have this. You can't keep winning game after game, especially in the most important games against the best quarterbacks, throwing for 130 yards. Like at some point, that is going to catch up with you. And that is an issue for me. And I just don't think Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback. I don't think he's overly accurate. I think he really is his game is really saved because he's a great scrambler and a great kind of QB design power O tush push runner. He's not that guy, and he doesn't run. We're talking about this guy getting run out of the league. I'm sorry. But we are Eagle fans and players are holding on to one fantastic game he played in the Super Bowl like 2+ years ago. We're not talking about the body of the rest of the work he's been for his career. And I don't want to look at it like, when the offense got called out, he went against the Steelers and he threw like 290 yards. Okay. And we just looked at how good that Steelers defense really is. That is my concern. They don't make any sense how they keep winning. It just feels like Barkley, you want to talk about valuable. To me, if Kenneth Gainwell or even DeAndre Swift is this running back, they're probably losing this game. Like, I think he values and steadies them that much on that offense.
Yeah.
A key thing, though, they lose to Kobe Dean. He's out for the season. He tore his patella tendon. He won't be there coming in for the rest of the season. And in this next game on defense, that is a part of it. I don't want to just focus all on the negatives because they did win and they deserve credit for that. I just was more concerned with what I saw on that offense come out of it. And then the Packers, before we get out of here. Next year is going to be some questions, Bri. I'm calling it right now. There is going to be rumblings halfway through the season about Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur if they don't start off hot. It might not be fair. It might not be fair at all because I like LaFleur as a coach. I think he's a damn good coach. But they did make this move to sign Love to this based on kind of the back end of last season. He had a very up and down, injury-prone, inconsistent year. And this playoff game, I understand he's a little banged up. He's down guys, even in the game. His right tackle goes out too. He was downright dreadful in that game. He was terrible. And that, I think, will be a conversation potentially halfway through the season next year.
I mean, you don't have to tell me. I felt like it was premature to commit to this guy for as sizable a contract as he got. I want to see if I'm going to commit to my quarterback for 50 plus million that he has a body of work of multiple great seasons, not one half of a good season and the other half kind of iffy. And that's what it was. He had a nice stretch of games down the stretch of one season, and they decided he's a 50 million a year quarterback. Like that was too much for me. That was too big of a leap. And this year he showed his warts. I mean, he's got a long way to go to prove that he's an upper echelon level quarterback. There's no way around it.
Yeah, I think it was also they were in a tough spot, right? Because he sat for 3 years. He's into the 4th year. Like, they were in a tough spot contract-wise of what they were going to do. They got to figure that out come next season and maybe make a couple other offensive moves to really kind of solidify and even get another pass rusher in there as well. I know Eagle fans are going to be mad at me down below. The final game on Sunday was the night game and the only good game of the weekend, which is really sad out of 6 games. The Commanders and the Bucks. Washington went to Tampa, win this one 23-20, a back and forth game, really decided on a couple plays, most notably the fumble that ended up happening that from the Bucks, and Baker Mayfield seemed to be on the rookie center. He kind of took kind of the blame for it after the game. That ends up happening. Washington cashes in, and I look at it more in the sense of like, man, the fourth quarterback, rookie quarterback now on the road to win a game is Jaden Daniels. This guy's going to be easily the offensive rookie of the year. He made the Pro Bowl in his first season. This guy, I know it's one season, so I don't want to jump at the shark. This guy, though, feels special. He just feels special. He feels like the moment does not affect him. When he said before this game, it's just another week, another game. Yeah, what do you expect the guy to say, right? But he really went out and did that. He's just calm, cool, collected, and I think they're a little bit dangerous going into Detroit this week. What did you think about this game, Brian, which was the only good game of Wild Card Weekend?
Yeah, I mean, watching it, you really felt like the two teams were very evenly matched, and it was going to take like a disastrous kind of play from one
Yeah.
team to decide it, because I felt like lining up from scrimmage, it was going to be that kind of game where it was tight all the way through. That's exactly how it played out, back and forth, like you said, close throughout. Both teams solid offenses and kind of leaky defenses, I think is the best way to put it. And as you said, the Bucks turnover there late in the game where they turn it over on like their own 20-yard line, it was just
Tough.
a very difficult pill to swallow for them. It sets up Washington beautifully, and Daniels connects then with McLaurin for the touchdown, and then orchestrates the drive down the stretch where they made the plays they needed to, set up the game-winning field goal with Zane Gonzalez, who doinks it
Doinked it
through,
in.
which got a nice call from Mike Tirico on the NBC
Yeah.
broadcast. But yeah, I mean, I think Daniels too is the takeaway. You and I have both been in agreement. The thing that's impressive about him is that the moment is never too big, and he deals with adversity arguably better than maybe any other quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
And doing so at this young of an age, I think that's what bears well for him going forward in his career. That he could have a game where things aren't clicking early, but he'll hang in there, he'll fight his way, make the winning plays, and that's all you can ask of a franchise quarterback and a franchise that's trying to get themselves turned around to get the stink that has been on them for so many years. And it feels like now, they broke their playoff drought. They win a playoff game for the first time in almost 20 years, I think it is.
2005, yeah.
And so yeah, this is a statement kind of win for Washington, and this now is like they got the most they possibly could out of this season. They're playing with house money
Yeah.
the rest of the way. Now they go to Detroit, nobody expects anything of them.
Right.
They could just rest and loose. But very impressive by Daniels and company going on the road, first start in the playoffs, and outplaying Tampa by just enough.
It felt like a turning point moment for their franchise, right? And that might be a little hyperbolic at this point, but it just did, right? A new owner, new front office, new coaching staff, all the stuff they dealt with Daniel Snyder and the scandals and everything that happened. This felt like a moment to wash it out, to get the monkey off your back, and to win a game in that fashion. Remember, right before that fumble, Washington had a 17-play drive, I think down to the Tampa 3-yard line, and they didn't get it. So they were dominating this game over 35 minutes, I think, of possession time. I think the Bucks had something like 40 plays, something crazy. They were barely had the ball. It's amazing that they even scored the points that they did with the time that they had. And I think this Washington team, we look at the lines a lot and we go, man, Dan Campbell, they go for it on fourth down a lot. This Washington team goes for it a lot. They did it multiple times in this game. And in that moment where they scored the touchdown right after the fumble, it was 4th and 2 on the 2. And they went for it again and didn't take the field goal there. They have guts. They have grit behind Cliff Kingsbury, the OC. Obviously, with the faith and blessing of head coach Dan Quinn, you see it. And this team and this offense, even when they don't get it, it doesn't deter them. It doesn't deter Daniels, and it doesn't deter the rest of them. And he's turning guys like Diami Brown or whatever into leading receivers in this game. Like, that deserves all of the credit in the world. And for all the flack that this Washington defense has taken, sometimes rightfully so, given the numbers, they showed up in this game. They played well enough to get the win. And I was impressed with this Commanders team. The Bucs, too, they deserve a lot of credit. Baker's a great QB. Had another solid game given the limited plays he had. Just really the rookie center, that fumble happens. And when teams are that evenly matched, the margins are razor thin. And that decided the game there, which was kind of a sad way for it to go out, but hell of a game for both of these teams, even coming down to the doink.
No doubt, and yeah, so evenly matched, and there was a lot of flack too with the Dan Quinn hire. I think with Washington, nobody believed that this team was going to do anything. Quinn got a lot of grief, of course, for what happened in the Super Bowl, blowing the big lead when he was with the Falcons, and so he wasn't seen as like an impressive hire. But he's proven to be exactly the right fit that they've needed. And yes, drafting the right quarterback has a lot to do with it, but Quinn deserves credit too. He really does.
Yeah, and the Kingsbury hire was brilliant. It was a brilliant hire. The Raiders wanted him. They stole him from there. I think that was an excellent move. He's getting some head coaching spots. If I'm Washington, I'm doing everything I can to hold on to that man at offensive coordinator. I'll up his salary. I'll say, listen, we got a great thing going here. I'll give you another $3 million. Just stay here. And if I was Kingsbury as well, you've kind of done the head coaching thing a couple times, from college to the pros. Maybe we decide to stay in this situation, a la maybe a Ben Johnson situation there. Although at least Kingsbury has done it and it hasn't really worked out as well. A great game and a really, really exciting finish to that one. Unfortunately, the only exciting one of Wild Card Weekend. And finally, Bri, before we get to picks, the Monday night game, Vikings and my Rams. The Rams displaced with the LA Wildfires. Of course, once again, our hearts go out to all of those people. There's a million places to donate. Please go and do that. It's a disastrous, traumatic situation that happened there, but displaced, getting back to football, into Glendale, Arizona. All the reason in the world for this team to lay down. Their families affected, coaches affected, front office members affected, and the NFL. And you know what? I'll give a lot of props to the Cardinals and the owner, the Bidwells, Michael Bidwell of the Arizona Cardinals. Gracious. They did everything to welcome the Rams and even turn their store to sell Rams gear, which that's got to hurt. To let all those 45,000 reported Ram fans in there. For the NFL to get the exact shade of paint to make sure the field is painted perfectly the Rams colors. To do all the things that they did. The NFL and the Arizona Cardinals deserve an immense amount of credit for hosting this game. And kind of my thanks and praise goes out to both of them for doing that. And I never thought I'd be thanking a Cardinals organization on this podcast, considering they're bitter rivals of the Rams, but they deserved a ton of credit in a moment where this franchise was down, and I can't thank them enough as a fan of that. The game itself, Bri, I don't know, maybe you'll get more into the Darnold part, because I'm obviously going to take the Rams part, but I said this defensive line, this is why I picked this team to win the game. They're dangerous, they're hungry, and that Vikings offensive line, even dating back to week 8 when Darisaw went out against the Rams, they were going to come after Darnold, and boy did they tied a playoff record, 9 sacks in this game, a fumble return touchdown by who should be the defensive rookie of the year in Jared Verse. What a performance from this team. The offense, I won't say fully woke up. They had their moments. They made their plays, 7 plays, 70 yards in the opening drive, really set the tone in there. At the end of the half, really, that touchdown to Davis Allen when I thought they were going to settle for a field goal. Fantastic. Offense really kind of didn't really do much in the second half, kind of played keep away, played the field position game, and let this defense tee off. Couple injuries happened in this game. Higbee goes out. Akilla Witherspoon goes out after he had the forced fumble and sack on Darnold that led to the Jared Verse touchdown. They got banged up in this game. About 5 different players ended up going out. Even Puka got stepped on in this game, but it didn't matter. They won this game. They dominated it from whistle to whistle. And the only thing that you could talk about really out of this game is the, quote-unquote controversial play. I'm interested to get your thoughts on. Did Stafford throw it away? Was it a fumble? Because that was a huge point early in the game. It's 10-3. That gets returned for a touchdown. The game's tied, and maybe we're talking about something completely different. In my opinion, At first, I thought it was absolutely a fumble. And then as they were reviewing it, the league is kind of tilted to offense. I'm like, he does clearly throw it. Now, there's no elbow involved, and I thought that had to be for those kind of plays. Apparently not. Apparently, you just throw it and there's a receiver in the vicinity, you're good. I thought it was a little bit of a gray area, but the NFL and I think it was Russell York or whatever was the NFL analyst or something like that on the broadcast. He said it was a throw as well. I thought the reffing crew throughout the game was terrible on both sides. I know that's a popular thing you could always talk about, but I thought in this game in particular, it was horrible. Like for both teams, they had no idea what they were calling on both sides of the ball. The Rams dominate still. They get this win. First win since our playoff run to the Super Bowl in 2021. Brian, what was your takeaway from this victory, 27-9?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of John Hussey as an
Yeah,
official. He's one who just and he was the ref for
he
this
was.
game. So yeah, it was another lackluster game from him. But I mean, you said it. That play is where the game turned because if that's a Vikings touchdown on that Stafford
Totally different
play,
game.
they return it for a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it's 10-10 at that point. Instead, it gets reversed, and I do think they got the call right. It did to me look like a pass. I mean, it wasn't exactly completely clear, but
Yeah.
I think there was enough to call it a pass. And then, from there, shortly after, right, the Rams get the defensive score,
Yeah.
and then later on get the touchdown to Davis Allen, and then it just felt like the game was over. I mean, the Vikings offensively, this was kind of embarrassing. I mean,
Yeah.
I
It was
get it. The
bad.
Rams have
Yeah.
a good young defensive line, 9 sacks. I can't put it all on the offensive line because Darnold, a lot of these plays, he was holding onto the ball for
So
way
much.
too
Oh my
long.
God.
And they were talking about it on the broadcast. Like, he's got to get rid of the ball. Instead, he's just waiting for the play to develop too long and it goes
Did,
down.
did you
I mean,
see
you're
did
just
you see
not
the
going to win it.
Minnesota broadcaster when he's holding the ball and it ends up going back for the touchdown? He's like, "Throw the ball, man!" And he's screaming at him. It was great.
I guess this was the radio
It was the
call.
radio announcer for the Minnesota Vikings. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, but I believe it as because I listened to a lot of the radio broadcasts like with Sirius, so I know a lot of
Yeah,
like the voices, and the Vikings guy is one of like the more
he's
passionate
intense.
people. So
Yeah,
yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, I mean, I think the Rams, they set the tone very early on in this game. Like, it wasn't great overall by the offense, but
no,
Stafford started off so hot. He
he
was
did.
what, like 9 for his first 9
Yeah,
throwing the ball.
he was good.
It's like the first play of the game, they get the play downfield to Nakua. It just felt like, okay, they're in business here. And I mean, you talked about all the stuff that going on off the field. This felt personal, like the Rams wanted to deliver for
Yeah,
their fans. I mean, Stafford talked about it at length in his post-game interview. It was clear that they used that to their advantage, that there was fuel. I don't want to say fuel to the fire for obvious reasons,
yeah,
but the Rams really did the best they could with an awful situation, and like you said, handled very well playing at the neutral site. I mean, there were no complaints about that. The building was full. You had both fan bases
yeah.
represented. They had the Rams logo on the field, so it was a good
It's a great job.
presentation. If only the game could have lived up to it, and unfortunately, it just was a runaway because the Vikings couldn't get settled in offensively. Rams defensive line harassed Darnold. Darnold just didn't stand a chance, and away we went.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, right? Like this, we look back at this Minnesota Vikings season, and what a season! 14-3. But all we're gonna remember is these last 2 weeks. We're gonna remember these last 2 weeks as a chance for the number one seed. They blow it, get blown out, score 9 points. I think they lost like 31-9. Then get a wild card round against a team that is dealing with all this stuff, who's not even playing a real home game. Score 9 points, lose 27-9. And the crazy thing is, this team lost 4 games this season in total, including the playoffs. 2 games to the Rams, 2 games to the Lions. Lost their 2 games to the Rams and Lions, week 8, week 9, back to back weeks. Lost week 18 in the wild card round, back to back weeks. That's crazy. And that is what
Yeah.
summed up the Vikings season. And, I feel bad for Darnold. I said he deserves some credit toward the end of the season that, maybe this guy gets some low ballot MVP votes, right? He's not going to win, but he's had a fantastic season. He deserves flowers. This Vikings team deserves flowers. I believe it was one of the titles of one of the podcasts I had recently. He cost himself so much money and a guaranteed starting job in these last 2 weeks. All he had to do was get a number one seed and win the divisional round. Just get to the NFC Championship. And I think he was the starter next year, and he was paid probably $100 million. Instead, he'll be lucky enough if he comes back for $10 or $15 million in a QB competition with J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. Like, that is the cruel reality of the NFL, that 2 games after you throw almost 40 touchdowns and lead a team to 14 wins, that's what happens to you. And that's just how finite, clean, and just absolute the NFL can be. And he deserves some of the blame holding on to the ball too long, and he just looked like, for lack of a better term, that he was seeing those ghosts again out there on Monday night. He really did. You could see it in his face. He was getting nervous even when he wasn't getting sacked. And he cost his team a chance of really making a run here in these playoffs. Sucks that, Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in football, in my opinion, 2 years ago wins 13 games, wins 14 games this year, lose in the wild card round both times. That's got to be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and I just felt like the Vikings in these last 2 games, like if you can consider the Week 18 game kind of a playoff game, I know it was, and obviously the one this week. To me, they approached it like it was a regular season game.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the playoffs, you have to elevate your game, and we saw that from a few different teams. That you can make that case for the Steelers, and for the Packers, and even the Chargers. But the Vikings in particular, like it just to me felt like they were going through the motions.
Yeah.
You looked at the second half. I know they weren't going to win the game, but there was no
No,
urgency.
nothing.
They
No
were
huddle, no
running an
nothing.
oh, right, no huddle, and they're like taking their time. It's like, what are they doing? This is a playoff game,
Yeah.
and they just had that kind of laissez-faire attitude
Yeah.
from the start of this game. That's not going to get it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just thought it was also Kevin O'Connell deserves some of the blame too. I thought it was a questionable decision. They're on the 50-yard line. 4th and 2 feels like a real punting situation right towards the end of the first half. Kevin O'Connell decides to go for it. It felt desperate in that moment when the game had not gotten away from them at the point. I think it was like 17-3. It had not gotten away from them because Minnesota was getting the ball in the second half. He gets sacked by Kobe Turner, and then the Rams come down the field and score that touchdown to Davis Allen, 24-3 at half, and the game is over. That was it. Like, he deserves some of the blame too, that some of those decisions just felt desperate in all the wrong ways. When there had to be urgency, as you said, in the second half, there wasn't. And when there didn't need to be urgency and risk, they went for it. Like, it just felt like a total mismatch on both sides of it. And it was a very questionable thing. And even Brian Flores, he's gotten a lot of credit this year. He's getting head coaching interviews, might even get up his job. I understand like 42%, I think, of the time they blitz the most in the NFL. When Stafford's chewing up your blitz and he was like 11 for 11 at one point, I don't know, maybe change the defensive scheme. I mean, maybe not just be beholden to what you do and you change it around and make adjustments mid-game. They didn't, and the Vikings go home yet again. Right, let's get to our picks finally, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready. Divisional round, as you highlighted. Some would say, I think we would, maybe the best weekend in sports. Certainly the best weekend in football is the divisional round, year in and year out. And boy, do we have a slate. Starts off on Saturday, 4:30. Once again, the Saturday early game. The Houston Texans will go to Kansas City, where they just were a few weeks ago. And I think they lost like 27-19, but basically they were dominated in that game. They're coming into this one. The Chiefs well-rested. Mahomes timing up bye weeks to have children. Had his 3rd kid. Congratulations to his family as well. They host the Houston Texans in this one, and that ferocious so-called pass rush of the Texans. Who you got in this one, Bri?
I mean, I don't think it's a blowout game. I mean, I've heard a lot of commentary that the Texans have no chance to win this game. I don't agree. I mean, we've talked a lot of this season about the Chiefs' shortcomings offensively, and one thing they don't blow out teams.
No.
So I expect this game is going to be close, and I get it. They're well rested. I think that almost could
Yeah.
have some harmful effects too. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think of how long it's been since Mahomes has been on the field, the bye week and the week before they rest and they get blown out by the Broncos. I
Yeah.
mean, they were just non-competitive with their backups. So it's been a while, and they haven't been at their sharpest on the offensive side really all season. So I feel like the Texans can make some noise with their defensive front getting after Mahomes. I don't think it'll be enough for Houston to win. I'm not going to get crazy, but I do think this is within a touchdown game. I'm picking the Chiefs, but I think this is going to be a fairly tight one.
Yeah, picking the Chiefs as well. The Chiefs play close games most part, so I expect this game to be close, particularly with that pass rush. I think you will see a little bit of rust, but the Chiefs are just so familiar with these moments. I mean, they got a heart of a champion, man. I mean, this is just what they do, and you give Andy Reid all this time, basically 3 weeks to scheme who you could possibly play, because it was really going to be one or another really on these teams. I think they're going to get the best of the Texans again. It'll be a solid game, but I don't think at any moment you'll feel like the Texans really have a shot giving the Chiefs in this one to get back to the AFC Championship where Patrick Mahomes has always been his entire career as a starter. The Lions
Amazing.
at 8 o'clock on Saturday will be hosting the Commanders, believe it or not. The Commanders, they'll be coming in there to Detroit. Brian, who you got in this game? Do you got the plunky rookie winning a second consecutive game on the road? Or do you think the Detroit Lions and all the stuff people have talked about, the defense, blah, 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 all season, do you think they get an opening win in their first game of these playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I've been high on the Commanders this season. I decided to go against them against my better judgment last week. It didn't work out. I'd be floored if they won this game. I feel like this one is going to be the Lions really stamping themselves and winning
Okay.
by double digits at least. I just feel like this is the defense we know has its issues, but the last time we saw them, they played pretty darn good in that Vikings game. I think that was
Yeah.
a game where they started to feel like they got more cohesive on that side of the ball. Getting Anzalone back is certainly a big deal. And the Commanders, like I said, to me, they're playing with house money.
They really
Nobody
are.
expects they're going to go in and win this game. If they're competitive, that would be great. But I just feel like what the Lions are able to do with their offense, starting with their offensive line, they're built for these kind of games. I feel like Dan Campbell and company are just gonna step on their throats in this game and win it by double digits. I think we get the
Wow.
best version of the Lions. I see it 35-14 Detroit.
Damn. See, I think the Commanders are a little bit sneaky in this game. I'm taking the Lions. I do think they'll cover the point spread that's going on right now, but I think they're a tiny bit sneaky. I think when you're playing with house money, when you have nothing to lose, when you don't really know anything else, because you're a young team, you're a rookie quarterback, that could potentially be dangerous. But I do think Detroit in Ford Field, it's going to be a zoo. I mean, that place is going to be going insane. Number one seed for the first time in their history, a chance to get back to the NFC Championship in back to back seasons and host the NFC Championship. I'm taking Detroit in that one. The Sunday game kicks off at 3 o'clock with my Rams going up to Philadelphia. Right now, the last time I checked, projected temperatures are around 21 degrees, give or take. Possible showers going on. Going to be a really nasty, cold game. Bry, I'll throw it over to you before I make my pick. Who you got in this one?
Well, I don't. You're not gonna like it, even though you're probably gonna agree with me because I can't imagine you're going with your team. But I am going Philly here. I just feel like top to bottom, they are clearly the better team here. The Rams, for as much success as they had last week, getting after Darnold, going to be a lot tougher going against that Philly
Absolutely.
offensive line. I feel like the recipe to win, if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to get like plus turnovers
Yeah.
from Jalen Hurts in the Philly offense. I'm just not so sure they're capable of that. I think it's a bounce back effort from the Philly offense. Rams, I think, will hang around. I don't think this will be a blowout game. The Eagles can do some weird things. You never fully trust Nick Sirianni in these big
Yeah, it's
games. That
true.
is definitely a factor. But ultimately, I think the talent wins out. I think the Rams got a lot out of this season, really continue a terrific run that they've had for a number of years under McVay, as you are well aware of. But I think their season comes to a close here in the city of brotherly love.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately taking the Eagles as well. I took the Rams last week. I thought that was a good matchup for them. I had them in that win. I was correct on that. I just think this Philly team is too physical. They're just too much for them. We'd seen this game in week 12 back in cozy LA at the time. In a nice weather game, 37-20. Barkley goes 255, sets a Philly franchise record, had over 300 all-purpose yards. I don't think he's going to do that on Sunday, but I do think this is going to be a nasty game, could be low scoring, and the Eagles are just built for physicality, for running the ball, and teams that come from good weather, Miami, the West Coast, they just don't fare well in these East Coast, East time zone, cold, wet games. They just don't play well. We just saw how bad Matt Stafford played against the Niners in like 50-degree raining weather on a Thursday night a few weeks ago. I expect more of the same in this game. I see, for me, unlike you, where you pick the Commanders and the Lions, and if the Commanders won, you'd be floored. I'd be floored if the Rams won this game. I just think this is the one
Okay.
team in the playoffs I said going in I wanted no part of. I did not want to play Philadelphia, even though I knew if we won our game, we were playing Philadelphia because I had no hope in the Packers whatsoever. This is the team I did not want to face. And I think you would need, for me, the way you win this game is not only turnovers, but you have to count on that inner turmoil that I talked about in the beginning part of this podcast of the Eagles offense. You got to hope those guys start fighting on the sidelines. Like a couple drives don't go the right way, and they start fighting. Everybody starts losing their composure. Maybe Brown, he starts crying for the ball, and Hurts forces it to him, and you take advantage of that. To me, I feel like that is really the only recipe for the Rams to win this game because they don't have enough physicality with Kyron to really run the ball. I don't think Stafford's going to have enough through the air. I don't think this offensive line is good enough against this Phillies D line and that back end of Philly as well. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Rams in there. If this weather is a little bit sunny and it's one of these weird Pennsylvania, New Jersey games where it's 60 degrees and sunny, maybe they got a shot. But in that place where that place is going to be an absolute nightmare with the fans that are going on, I would be floored if this game is honestly even within 10 points. I'd be happy if it's competitive. I'm taking the Eagles in this one. And finally, Bri, the game that no surprise was scheduled for the last game of the divisional round. 6:30 on Sunday, the Baltimore Ravens, the 3 seed, go to the Buffalo Bills, the 2 seed. Everything we have wanted as football fans. When we saw the playoff seeding come out, we were like, well, that's the game we want right there. Better happen. And it did. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, the 2 betting favorites, the 2 consensus favorites, because it's not fair to Barkley, for MVP. Interesting thing this week, Lamar kind of got the nod as kind of like an AP kind of all pro that he was named. Usually guys that are named as the number 1 all pro guy usually get the MVP. So keep your eye on that. Could be an interesting wrinkle to the race. But enough about that. The game itself. Buffalo, Josh Allen in his career, 1 win, Bry, in the divisional round. 1 win. That's all he's got. He's lost to Burrow. He's obviously lost to Mahomes. His only win, he beat these Baltimore Ravens in an ugly 17-3 game a few years ago, where a pick 6 decided the game. Does Josh Allen get a win again? Or does he go down in the divisional round and Lamar Jackson gets back to back-to-back AFC championship games? What say you, Bry?
I believe he gets a win. I'm going with the home Buffalo Bills. I'm a little surprised that they've given the Ravens a 1 point favorite on the road. I mean, I think it is obviously a very evenly matched game, but typically when it's evenly matched, you give 3 points to the home team. So I kind of thought it would be Bills -3. They're
Yeah.
telling you they think the Ravens are clearly the better team. It's close. I mean, they're both terrific teams. I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I mean, I'm really looking forward to watching it. Wouldn't be surprised if both teams go over 30 points because I don't think either defense is really going to be able to get that many stops. I just can't get it out of my head. Lamar Jackson has had these struggles in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think he'll play well, but I feel like he's going to come up a little bit short. And the Bills in their building with Allen playing as well as he is, and he's got it all working right now. Their defense comes off a game where they allowed only 7 points, nothing after the first possession. You're playing in Buffalo with the advantage of having your fan base behind you. I just feel like it's the Bills' time here where they are going to win this game, knock off Lamar Jackson. I could see it being like, 34-31, something like that.
Yeah.
The Ravens, the defense concerns me. I feel a little bit better about Buffalo defensively, and I just feel like if they can slow down the running game enough, with Zay Flowers looking like he's slated to miss another game, big deal for their passing game. And you're just not stopping Josh Allen right now. He's a man possessed. I'm taking him in his building to get it done in a terrific game.
I'm also taking the Buffalo Bills, believe it or not. I went back and forth on this game. I could see the Ravens winning. I think the margins are going to be thin. But this game at kickoff is supposed to be freezing. It's up in Buffalo. And I'm not saying that the Ravens don't play outdoors, obviously. But I think the Buffalo Bills are equipped for that in their stadium. And as I've said, and I'm not going to go back on my word, I think this is just Josh Allen's time. I don't know if he'll beat Mahomes if he gets to that. I'm not saying that. But I think to get back to an AFC championship, to have another deep playoff run, to cement in people's minds, even though it only has to do with the regular season, but the playoffs have influence, especially in public opinion, on the MVP. I think this is where he stamps that. I know Derrick Henry, I get that on that side of the ball, but I think Buffalo sells out for the run. They control them up front. And we got to monitor the Zay Flowers situation, whether he's going to play in this game or not. I think that is a threat as well for him not to go game time. And if he goes, is he really 100%? I don't think he is at all. He's a Pro Bowl. He's the only Pro Bowl wide receiver that they had, the first one that they've had. That is a big loss. I think it is Buffalo's time in a close game. I think this game is going to be like 24-20. I think the margins are going to be thin. I think it's going to be way down scoring. A cold, windy night. You're going to absolutely be seeing breath, and this is going to be an all-time game that is going to be played in Buffalo. But I am also boringly, for the show's purposes, taking the
Yeah.
Bills as well in this one. Bri, that concludes what is a long podcast. So if you've been here this long, we greatly appreciate you. Of course, there's all our socials and everything in the description below. Please comment any of your thoughts, your picks, coaching hires, anything else that might happen even between the next time that we record it. I can't wait for the divisional round. Of course, I'm going to be going crazy for my team, even though I have next to no hope. I'm really playing with house money as a fan, to be honest, because I'm just proud that they got to another playoff win and got to the divisional round. Brian, any final thoughts you have before we get out of here?
Well, you and I have all four of the same picks, so we all have the
We're
same picks. We're
boring.
going with all four home teams. Yeah, a little boring. We did pick one underdog. I mean, technically the Bills are the underdog in this
Yep.
game, even though it may not feel like it. So we'll see how it plays out. But a final thought, when it comes to the Jets coaching search, as I bring this up again,
Oh,
this
Lord.
wonderful topic, I have found one candidate that I would say I would rather have Rex Ryan than. I want to see if you can
Oh, no.
identify who it is. It is somebody who they've interviewed who has been a head coach before, but who I would tell you if it's between him and Rex Ryan, I would actually take Rex. You have a stab at it?
Oh, God. He's been a head coach before?
Been a head coach before. The last 2 years, he has been an offensive coordinator with a team that made the playoffs this year.
Matt Nagy.
Good guess, but not it.
Oh, I mean, you guys have interviewed 500 people this season. All right,
You want me to just tell you who it is?
one more. So a guess,
Okay.
a team that made the playoffs. The only other one that comes to my mind is Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, Arthur Smith.
Oh God, no, dude, no.
Yeah. So if it was between him and Rex, I would actually take
Those are
Rex
both bad
outside
choices. They're
that.
bad.
But I didn't want to see them interview Arthur Smith. I mean, we saw enough of him as a head
They're
coach with
interviewing like
Atlanta.
25 different guys. I mean, figure it out. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, that's the Jets for you.
Yeah. And just as a note before we get out of here, and I think that was a good final point for your poor Jets. Right now reported in Buffalo at the time of kickoff, 10 degrees, they'll feel like -11, winds 15 miles an hour, gusts up to 20, a slight chance of flurries of snow. That's what's going to be the game.
Yes.
Freezing cold temperatures in Buffalo.
I just feel like Allen is much better equipped to play in those kind of conditions.
Which is weird, right? Because Lamar plays outside in a cold weather city. It just feels like him in particular, like he just doesn't seem like he likes the cold at all.
Yeah.
So I think that is a factor as well.
Like he could,
yeah, and I'm like you. I'll give him so much props, and it'd be so great for him if he got to 500 as his playoff record. But I can't also like put out of my mind some of these flameouts that he's had. Even dating back to last year, I can't put that out of my mind. And I think it is Josh's time to get back to the AFC Championship where he only got to once before. But guys, that's going to do it for us. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you'd be so kind. We'll be back to talk about the results of the divisional round next week and, of course, preview and give our picks for the conference championship. It's the best time in the NFL season right now, and I'm so pumped if you can't tell. We'll talk to you next week. And until then, thanks for watching.